As the title of this video states, Australia has been intentionally burned, except it's been carried out by the Satanists who rule Australia and the world. There's a number of reasons why I believe this, and I'll briefly cover the main ones. And this isn't the first time they've done this in Australia and other countries, but the evidence has become more compelling. Firstly, there's the sheer number of individual fires that have started within a short space of time, and the vast majority of these would have been lit by the Satanists. Secondly, the amount of dead dry foliage has been deliberately allowed to build up to extreme levels by governments around Australia over many years. It's not as some have misrepresented those politicians and bureaucrats in charge as being naive or burying their heads in the sand and not heeding the warnings. Even a child knows dead dry vegetation is highly flammable, and the more of it there is, the more severe the fire will be. And these people are not stupid. They have implemented policies designed to create a gigantic fire hazard, including reducing prescribed burns in bushland in cooler months to largely ineffective levels and well short of what's been recommended to have an impact on the intensity and size of wildfires. The amount of logging allowed on government-owned land has also been dramatically curtailed to the point where imports of wood products into Australia exceeds exports by over $2 billion per annum, even though Australia is the 7th most forested nation on Earth. Logging is necessary to create fire breaks to prevent wildfires from advancing. Another reason to believe the Satanists are behind the fires is because water resources have been locked up on purpose. Water has been prevented from getting to where it's needed further down the Murray-Darling Basin to areas affected by the fires. This is because private dams have been built in the Murray-Darling Basin in recent years, as this article shows. And also because of so-called floodplain harvesting, as this article reports. This is where they put up a large embankment on a floodplain to stop water flowing down the river. So after they cut down the trees, level the land, and put up an embankment, they then use it to grow cotton. Meanwhile, towns along the Darling River run short of water. I'll put a link to the articles below. On top of this, there was a severe drought in many parts of Australia last year. It was reported as Australia's driest year on record, with rainfall 40% below average nationally. Now, I don't believe this was an accident, and I'll get into that later. Another reason for believing the Satanists are behind the fires is because the anthropogenic climate change scam is falsely being pushed as the reason for the severity of the fires by the politicians, fire chiefs and media. Not only do they know it's a lie, but they are in on the deception, so it can be used as an excuse to monitor and control people's lives as well as rip them off on their energy bills. As mentioned earlier, I don't believe the drought in Australia in 2019 was an accident, because weather modification has been going on for decades. For example, the Special Commission on Weather Modification was established in 1950 in the US, and this is a report published by the Commission in 1965, which I'll put a link to below. Likewise, this article refers to a BBC documentary which reveals that cloud seeding was being used by 47 countries, including Australia. I've heard weather modification is also conducted by radar sites around the world. The article, which I'll put a link to below, then goes on to ask why the technology isn't being used to stop the fires or prevent drought. Of course, the answer is we have a bunch of Satanists controlling Australia who use weather modification technology to do the opposite and cause drought. And only when the fires have caused enough damage do they then send plenty of rain, which causes other problems like washing ash into rivers and flooding. Furthermore, I don't believe the very heavy rainfall and subsequent severe flooding that occurred in Jakarta, Indonesia on New Year's Day was an accident either. The governor of Jakarta was blamed for failing to build the flood control infrastructure that would have reduced the severity of the flooding, but that of course was part of his job description and part of the satanic plan. And I talk about the significance of the date, 1st of January 2020, in terms of satanic numerology in the video, a key indicator of when the tribulation will begin, which I'll put a link to below. As we see here, there's a link below to the video. There was a meeting of the Weather Modification Advisory Committee in Austin, Texas on June 6 last year, from which we get the Freemason number 66, with June being the 6th month. As explained in the video, a key indicator of when the tribulation will begin, the Satanists like to use double numbers to express Freemason duality. In other words, they pretend to be doing weather modification for a good purpose, but they're actually doing it for evil. There was another advisory committee meeting held on December 12 last year, from which we get the Freemason number 33 by adding the 1 and the 2 together for both the day and the month, with December being the 12th month. Another reason why I believe the fires were so intense is because of metallic compounds sprayed from planes prior to the fires. From what I've heard, they released aluminium, strontium and barium compounds, thereby making the fires much worse. A few times last year I saw a plane fly overhead and leave a white trail several kilometres long. Perhaps it was a plane like this weather modification company uses, which was founded in 1961, which I'll leave a link to below. From what I heard, the fires were so hot that they killed the microbes in the soil, so that if you try and plant seed in it, it won't grow. Many people have already relocated because of the fires, and that's part of the Satanist agenda, to make sure others don't live in rural areas and grow their own food and be self-sufficient. Now, I had expected the Satanists to step it up this year and beyond in moving Australia and the rest of the world towards the mark of the beast system. As explained in the video, a key indicator of when the tribulation will begin, the Satanists use the number 22 to represent the future mark of the beast system, and they derived the number 22 from the year 2020 because 0 means nothing in their numerology. I also show how the Satanists used the number 22 in relation to the proposed $10,000 cash transaction limit in the video Australian Cash Ban towards the Mark of the Beast, which I'll put a link to below. COVID-19, the supposed deadly respiratory condition from the supposed novel strain of the coronavirus, is also something the Satanists planned and will use to bring the world closer to the Mark of the Beast system this year and beyond. COVID-19 equals 36 in Pythagorean numerology, which is code for 666, as explained in the video, a key indicator of when the tribulation will begin. Some companies like Aldi have banned cash payments in their stores to supposedly stop the spread of the coronavirus, hence the anti-cash agenda. And no doubt the Satanists will try to push everyone except themselves to get the toxic coronavirus vaccine after they release it. In fact, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison, who is just a Freemason actor, announced on March 18, with 18 equal to 6 plus 6 plus 6, that anyone wanting to enter an aged care facility will be required to have had the flu vaccine after May 1st. And the Satanists have been pushing Australians to get the flu vaccine early this year. So when they get sick after receiving the flu vaccine, because it substantially increases the risk of getting infections, they'll get a coronavirus test, and a portion of them will be misdiagnosed as having the coronavirus. In fact, we know many people die from viral and bacterial infections every year, and the coronavirus test kits don't rule out that a person taking the test may have such infections. So if people are getting sick and dying, it's not because of the coronavirus. In fact, the massive and widespread use of sanitizers and disinfectants would be promoting the growth of superbugs, which can cause people to become ill and die. Furthermore, there's a number of videos of people checking up on large hospitals with emergency departments in pandemic-affected areas, showing that they're basically empty and that there's no people coming in to get tested at coronavirus testing facilities. I also suspect the Satanists will later blame those who refuse the coronavirus vaccine for supposedly keeping the pandemic going, just like Christians will be falsely blamed for things when the Antichrist is on the scene. I also expect the Satanists to impose certain restrictions on those who refuse the vaccine, which is a foretaste of what the Great Tribulation will be like when those who don't take the mark can't buy or sell. I talk about the connection between vaccines and the Mark of the Beast in the video, a key indicator of when the tribulation will begin. The Satanists will also use COVID-19 as the excuse to cause much financial and economic turmoil, which has already begun. COVID-19 is also being used as an excuse to increase surveillance and expedite the rollout of 5G networks. I see heaps of numerology being used by the Satanists, which means COVID-19 was pre-planned. It would take me many hours to run through all the numerology I've seen. But to provide an example, the Australian government announced on April 4, from which we get the number 44, with April being the 4th month, with 44 being code for death and destruction, that it would spend $220 million, from which we get the Mark of the Beast system number 22, with 0 meaning nothing in numerology, to upgrade the CSIRO's Geelong laboratory, which is supposedly testing 2 coronavirus vaccines. So I'm reminded of the verse in 2 Timothy chapter 3 which says, "This know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come." So we need to put our faith in the Lord Jesus Christ that He will see us through the dangerous times that lie ahead if we believe the true free grace gospel, which is the only gospel that saves, and that is, eternal or everlasting life is received through a simple one-time decision to put 100% of one's faith or trust on the Lord Jesus Christ, understanding that He is God in the flesh, and His death, burial, and resurrection enables the believer to have forgiveness of all sins, past and future. But if someone adds anything to this, whether it's baptism, turning from sins, feeling sorry for sins, asking Jesus to save you, making a confession to Jesus, etc., then they add in works and cancel out grace. So please share this and the other important videos on this channel.